That voice cracked through the morning fog like thunder off stone. I didn't even have to look, I already knew who it was. Martha Langley. The widow. Face red, eyes wild, standing barefoot in the mud outside the market square, holding her youngest to her chest while two grown men, William Hensley and his idiot cousin, backed her against the wall like dogs around fresh meat. The boy's arm was bruised. I could see it from 10 feet away. I dropped the horseshoe I'd been hammering mid-strike. The hiss of the forge behind me faded into silence as I stepped out onto the path, thick smoke from my leather apron curling around my boots. Everyone else turned away, just like they always did when the Langley woman needed help. Too scared. Too selfish. Or worse, too entertained. Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from. Thanks. You should teach your brat some manners, William growled, shoving her with his shoulder. Stealing apples now, is he? Just like his good-for-nothing father. I was already walking. Dead in the dirt, and you still walking around like you belong here. Leave her be, I said, voice low. He turned. And laughed. Oh. Look who it is. He turned to his cousin. The hammer monkey thinks he's got something to say. I didn't repeat myself. I didn't have to. My boot print stopped 3 feet away from him, sun bouncing off the iron tongs still in my hand. My grip was tight, knuckles white, and I could feel the forge's heat still clinging to my arms. I'd been working since dawn, bending steel, shaping raw fire, and this man thought I was going to back down? William smirked and turned back to the widow. Go on, then. Run back to your shack. And take your bastard kids with you. I swung first. The metal tongs cracked against his cheekbone with a sickening snap. He stumbled, screaming, blood running from his mouth before he hit the dirt like a sack of wet grain. His cousin didn't even wait. Charged at me with a yell, fists raised, and I met him halfway, dropping my shoulder and driving him straight into the muddy ground with the kind of force only 20 years at the forge can build. He groaned and didn't get back up. Just like that, it was over. Martha was frozen. Her children, wide-eyed behind her skirts, looked like they couldn't decide whether to cry or run. The boy, little Tommy, clutched his mother's arm, lip bleeding where one of them must have struck him. I looked down at William, spitting blood and bits of broken tooth into the dirt, and finally spoke. This is your warning. Next time you touch her, I won't stop at your jaw. He tried to speak but couldn't. I turned to Martha. You all right? She nodded slowly. I didn't mean for you to. I did, I cut in. Now get home. I'll bring food this evening. She blinked like she didn't believe it. Like no one had spoken to her with kindness in years. Go. They left, barefoot and trembling. I stood there as the villagers slowly filtered back into their routines, eyes avoiding mine. Not one of them had lifted a finger to help her. Not one had called out. And not one of them missed what came next. Because I didn't go back to the forge. I walked over to William, bent down, and looked him dead in the eye. You think I care what the rest of this town whispers about her? I said. You think I care what they whisper about me? I've buried better men than you. Don't test how far I'll go to protect what's right. Then I stood and walked away without waiting for a reply. My name's Elias Quinn. Most folks around here call me the Blacksmith, like that's all I am. Just a quiet man who keeps to himself. Someone with burned hands, a furnace for a heart, and no family to speak of. But that day? That was the day they remembered something they'd forgotten. Even iron bleeds when struck hard enough. And even the quiet ones have limits. I didn't go looking for a family. I didn't plan to take in a woman who'd lost everything and 4 children she couldn't feed. I didn't expect the ridicule. Or the stares. Or the threats that would come. But sometimes, fate doesn't ask what you want. It just throws fire in your path and dares you to walk through it. That was the beginning. The moment everything changed. And if you think that fight was loud, wait until you hear what came next. Because protecting them from the outside world was just the start. The real danger was already inside the house. And I didn't see it coming until it was almost too late. You'd think after that fight, after blood in the street and bones in the dirt, people might leave us alone. They didn't. In fact, that's when the real trouble began. First came the whispers. Cowards in corners, pretending they weren't watching me load Martha's firewood into a cart. Pretending they didn't notice when I started walking her kids home from the market. Suddenly, every move I made had an audience. Eyes behind curtains. Words exchanged behind hands. And not kind ones, either. I heard one of them, Mrs. Calhoun, the baker's wife, loud as day as I passed her store. Imagine, a man like him bringing that woman into his house. No priest. No papers. Just shame. She didn't say it to my face. But I stopped walking. Turned. Met her eyes through the flour-dusted window and said just loud enough, "I'd rather carry her burdens than your bitterness." She didn't speak again. They hated me for it. Hated that I didn't flinch. That I didn't bend to their pious little rules. That I opened my door to a woman they'd spent years pretending didn't exist unless they were using her name as a warning to their daughters. But I didn't care what they thought of me. What made my jaw clench was what they thought of her. They called her things filthy, lazy, dangerous, like being a mother with no husband was a crime. Like struggling to feed 4 mouths made her less of a woman. They said I only helped her because I was lonely. That maybe I'd always been a little strange, a little too quiet. And that now. I'd finally snapped. But here's the thing. They didn't know what it looked like when her daughter, Lila, finally slept through the night without crying. They didn't see Tommy's face light up when I taught him how to strike iron on an anvil, how strong his little arms had gotten, how proud he was when he made his first nail. They didn't hear the laughter that came back into the house once it wasn't just mine echoing off the walls. They didn't see the family we were becoming. They only saw what they wanted to destroy. One evening, just after the harvest moon, I found a dead rabbit nailed to my door. No note. Just blood. And a message they didn't need to spell out. Stay in your lane. Stay in your trade. And don't bring her here. Martha found it before I could take it down. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. Just stood there, mouth tight, hand over her heart like she was trying to keep it from falling apart. I walked up behind her and touched her shoulder. She wouldn't look at me. "I told you this would happen," she whispered. I nodded. "I know. They're not just angry at me," she said. "They're afraid of you now." I didn't respond. Because she wasn't wrong. There's a certain kind of fear that comes when a man refuses to bow. When he breaks the script everyone else follows. I wasn't supposed to care. I wasn't supposed to fight. I was supposed to stay behind the forge, swinging my hammer in silence while the world burned outside. But I didn't stay silent. I chose her. And now they wanted me to pay for it. By the next Sunday, half the town had stopped coming to me for work. Orders dried up. Even old Mr. Bennett, who I'd made tools for every spring for 12 years, left my payment on the table and didn't say a word. I heard what he said when he walked out, though. Shame what's become of him. Like I was the one who'd lost my soul. Martha offered to leave. Said she'd take the kids and go north. Said I didn't owe her anything. That she didn't want to be the reason I lost everything I'd built. But that's where she was wrong. Because what I was building now was worth more than iron. More than coin. More than the town's approval ever could be. So I looked her in the eye and said, "You're not in my way, Martha. You are my way." And I meant every word. But I knew something was coming. People like William didn't take humiliation lightly. And the more the town talked, the more dangerous their silence became. Because hatred doesn't always show up with fists. Sometimes, it hides in the law. And the law? Was about to come knocking. I was finishing a horseshoe when I heard the boots. Heavy. Steady. Not the kind of step you hear from a man making a friendly call. I didn't even look up. Sheriff. He stopped at the edge of the forge. Dust on his coat, badge catching the firelight. Hat pulled low, jaw clenched tight. Sheriff Willard Hawthorne, man who'd rather drink sour milk than see someone poor stand a little too proud. I let the metal sizzle in the trough, wiped my hands slow. Still didn't ask why he was here. I already knew. "You been busy lately," he said finally. I nodded once. "Work doesn't stop. That right?" His voice had a bite to it. "Funny. Town's saying your work looks different these days. Like maybe you're forging more than iron." I leaned my arm on the anvil. "You want something, Sheriff?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I want peace. Order. I want to stop hearing my townsfolk whispering about how the blacksmith's got himself a widow under his roof. And 4 fatherless mouths eating from his table. I want to stop hearing talk that you laid hands on William Rooks." My jaw flexed. "That man laid hands on her first." "I ain't here to argue morals, Elias," he snapped. "I'm here to uphold the law." I stepped forward then. Just enough for the hammer on my belt to catch his eye. "And what law did I break, Sheriff? Feeding children? Giving shelter to someone this town left for dead? Or was it refusing to look away while a drunk dragged a woman through the mud?" His mouth twitched. Not quite a smirk. Not quite a scowl. "You're harboring a woman with no papers," he said. "No kin. No husband. That puts her in violation of the vagrancy statutes." "Vagrancy?" I repeated, my voice sharpening. "She's got a home now. Right here." "She's not your wife," he fired back. "You got no claim on her. And that means she's got no legal place in this town, especially with children who don't carry your name." I took a breath. A long one. Then I looked him dead in the eye. "You want me to throw her out?" "I want you to do what's right, Elias. Before you lose what little standing you got left." The threat hung in the air like the scent of scorched oil. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned my back on him. Picked up the horseshoe. Set it on the rack. Then I said, quiet and cold. "You tell the council if they want to tear a mother from her children, they'll have to drag her out themselves. And if they try..." I turned around again, slower this time. "They'll have to go through me." He left without another word. But the message was clear. They weren't going to fight me in the open anymore. Not after what happened in the square. They were going to come in suits and smiles. With papers and rules twisted to serve their fear. They were going to use the law to do what their fists couldn't. And the worst part? They'd call it justice. I told Martha that night. Sat her down in the kitchen while the kids slept in the next room. Her hands shook when I told her what the sheriff said. But she didn't cry. Not this time. "I should go," she said softly. "I can't let you lose everything because of me." And there it was again. That shame they planted in her. That lie they fed her until she believed she was a burden, not a blessing. I took her hands and said, "You're not going anywhere." Her eyes searched mine, desperate and afraid. "But the law." "I don't follow cowards hiding behind badges," I said. "I follow what's right." And what was right? Was making sure those kids had a home. Was making sure she had more than survival. Was making sure she really knew that she was loved, not pitted. Chosen, not tolerated. And I would not let anyone take that from her again. But we both knew things were about to change. And soon, we'd have to decide. Run. Or stand. And standing might mean losing everything. I didn't get a summons. Didn't need one. Word travels fast in a town this size, faster than justice, slower than guilt. The morning of the hearing, I was already waiting outside the courthouse when the rest of them arrived in their press suits and their smug little smiles. Councilmen. Business owners. Sheriff Willard, looking like he already knew how it would end. And Martha, standing small beside me, but not shaking this time. Just quiet. Like a flame that had burned all night and decided it would not go out. They didn't waste time. This is a matter of law, not sentiment, one of the councilmen said. Mr. Elias Thorne has been found in violation of civil code, sheltering an unregistered dependent, harboring minors not his own, and inciting violence against a respected citizen. Respected? I nearly laughed. That respected citizen had a broken jaw and 3 missing teeth, and he still hadn't dared come near her since. But that's how it always goes, doesn't it? They hit you first, then cry the loudest. The judge, a small man who hadn't looked me in the eye once, cleared his throat. Do you deny the charges, Mr. Thorne? I stood. I deny nothing. I gave a mother and her children a home when none of you would offer a hand. I gave her safety when others offered silence. And I gave her dignity when this town left her in the dirt. Murmurs rippled through the back rows. But I didn't stop. I looked at them all, every face that had turned away at the market, every neighbor who whispered but never stood up. Let me ask this room something, I said, louder now. What crime did she commit? What law says a woman can't survive unless she belongs to a man with property or a title? A silence fell then. Heavy. Guilty. I pointed toward the back where Martha stood, holding her children close. You all watched her beg for scraps while William Rooks drank away her husband's pension. You knew what he was. You knew. And when she left him, when she crawled out of that house covered in bruises and blood, you turned your backs. A few heads dropped. Good. Let the shame sit where it belonged. I took a step forward. So if your law says she has no right to eat, or sleep, or raise her children in peace, then maybe the problem isn't with me. The judge shifted in his chair. Glanced at the sheriff. Willard's jaw was set, eyes cold. And then he stood. She's not your wife, he said. Those kids aren't yours. You expect us to believe this isn't about something else? I stared at him. And then, very calmly, I said, no, Sheriff. I expect you to remember that you wear a badge, not a crown. The room froze. Even the judge blinked. I let the silence do its work. Then added, and as for those kids, they don't need my name. They need safety. And if I can give them that, I'll wear the cost with pride. That should have been the end. But just when I thought they'd reach for a fine or a forced removal, someone else stood up. In the crowd. It was Old Man Dyer. Owner of the tannery. Barely said 2 words to me in 10 years. He cleared his throat. I remember when Elias was just a boy, hauling buckets for his father. He never asked for a handout. Never caused a bit of trouble. Just worked. Hard. Every damn day. He looked at Martha. Then back at the judge. If he says this woman's worth protecting, I believe him. And if this town turns on him, it'll lose more than it knows. The room stirred. More people stood. One by one. Not many, but enough to shake the council's spine. Enough to make the judge hesitate. He called a recess. And when they came back, they didn't declare me innocent. But they didn't force her out, either. Instead, they rewrote the ruling, called her a legal domestic resident under conditional oversight. Their words. Not mine. But I'd won. Not just the hearing. The right to protect what mattered. Martha cried that night. Not out of fear. Out of relief. I thought no one would ever stand for me again, she whispered. I held her hand. You don't need the whole town, I said. You just need one man who won't move. It happened just before dawn. The air was thick, wrong, and I knew it even before the first scream. Fire! I bolted upright, lungs already burning from the smoke curling under the door. Martha was out of bed before I even said her name, scooping up the baby as I grabbed the boys and pulled them toward the hallway. But the heat, it was everywhere. Orange. Violent. Crawling up the walls like it had been waiting. And in that moment, I knew, this wasn't an accident. They had come through the barn. Poured kerosene all along the beams. Locked the back entrance from the outside. Cowards. Whoever did it, maybe it was Rooks, maybe one of the men who couldn't stand losing in court, they wanted to finish what they started. Wanted to erase what we'd built. Wanted to make sure the town never forgot who was supposed to be in control. But they made one mistake. They underestimated the man who hammered iron every day of his life. I shoved open the kitchen door, fire licked the ceiling. The kids were coughing now. Crying. I hoisted the smallest boy under one arm, grabbed Martha's hand with the other, and forced us through the smoke toward the pantry window. It was narrow. Sharp-edged. But it was the only shot we had. One at a time, I told her. Pass them through. Don't stop. She hesitated. I didn't. I shoved my shoulder against the frame until the wood cracked and opened enough to squeeze the first boy through. Then the next. Then the baby. And finally, Martha. I could have followed. I should have followed. But I turned back. Because I heard the horses. And because behind the forge wall, my tools, my life, were still there. Buried under sparks and timber, yes. But I couldn't let them have the last word. Not like that. I staggered back through the front, heat everywhere, breathing fire now. But I saw it, the black cloak disappearing over the hill. Rooks. Or one of his devils. I knew it. I didn't chase. Instead, I opened the forge chest. And took out the only thing that ever made me feel truly whole, my father's hammer. Still intact, still strong. I held it in my burned hands, watched the flames curl toward the rafters, and made a vow I didn't say out loud. This fire ends here. They found me later, after the flames had eaten every wall but one. Collapsed beside the hearth. Covered in ash, skin scorched and broken. But alive. Barely. The recovery took months. They said I'd never lift iron again. I didn't care. Because the house was gone, but the people inside it had lived. And Martha, she didn't leave. Not when the smoke cleared. Not when the whispers returned. Not even when I told her she deserved a better man than one with melted hands and half a roof. She stayed. And married me in the ashes. They rebuilt. Not just the home. The town. A few neighbors started dropping off planks. Food. Coins wrapped in handkerchiefs with no names. The same people who once turned their backs now offered their hands. That's how it goes. One man stands long enough and others remember how to. Years passed. The forge stayed cold. But the family didn't. Her kids grew up knowing love, not fear. They called me father by choice. And when they asked about the fire, I told them the truth. Some men burn because they're empty inside. But some walk through flames because they've got something worth carrying out. That's the story. Of a quiet blacksmith. Of a woman no one helped until one man did. And of a town that forgot what courage looked like until the fire showed them.